It's Ray Wheatley from Fight News. I'm here with Barry Michael, the former IBF junior lightweight champ. And Barry, if I could, mate, I'd like to go through your career, mate, all the big fights you had, and you had several of them. Back in 1982, Barry, you fought Claude Noel, who was the 1981 WBA lightweight champ. Tell me about your fight with Claude Noel.
Yeah, it was actually a Commonwealth title defence of mine after Claude had lost his world lightweight title. And I had my life savings, which was I think about 40 odd grand at the time, on the line. I promoted the fight at Festival Hall, bought him out a month before, gave him good sparring, looked after him, and looked after him too well. The night of the fight, the day before the fight, I was still in the red and was thinking about the promotion and the money more than the fight. And the day of the fight, because I made some outrageous statements, it was the ex-champ versus the next champ and all that. Everyone bought tickets. There was a huge crowd there at the hall, and I got in the ring, and then they announced Claude in the ring, and he took his dressing gown off, and it was all black, gleaming muscle. And I looked across the ring, and I thought, I forgot this bit, and I just was flat. I think I was just mentally and physically flat, but lost a 15-round split to him. But he was certainly one of the better fighters I fought. But I sort of figured in my hometown I might have got it, but that's the way it goes.
It was a great fight, Baz, and that was there that night, mate, and that could have went either way, mate. Now, another one of your great fights, you fought in 1983 against Frank Ropis, and it was around 50 degrees Celsius that particular night in Melbourne. Tell me about that fight with you and Frank.
Yeah, well, Frank was the welterweight champion, I was the lightweight champion, and he'd made noise for quite a long time that he was a light welterweight and that no one would fight him at light welterweight, so I fought him for the Australasian light welterweight title at 63.5, and I knew it was going to be an incredibly hard fight because I'd sparred him on a number of occasions. It was always a fight, and he was incredibly physically strong and just walked through everything you threw, and that's what happened on the night. But it was so hot, it was 55 degrees under the ring lights, and it was he's the physically hardest and strongest bloke I think I ever fought, and I hit him and hurt him, and he just wind himself up and just keep walking through it until finally in the 10th he sort of collapsed and he came out for the start of the 11th, but it was all over basically. But certainly a warrior and a half, Frank Ropis. And
the great Johnny Famishon was the ref that night.
Yeah, Famo was the ref, and he still looked in pretty good condition then, John. I think he was a bit nervous himself before the fight with Frank snarling and growling. He's a pretty mean character, Frank Ropis, but we're great mates now. He didn't speak to me for a long time, but we're good mates now.
Barry, in 1982, mate, you went in with the American knockout artist, Al Earthquake Carter. 24 fights, 23 KOs. Tell me about, is he the hardest puncher?
In the 8th round, he came closest to putting me down than anyone did. I never took an 8 count against anyone, but the 8th round, the commentator Mike Ryan gave me up as gone, and I was badly shaken, and certainly everything he threw, everything he hit me with was incredibly powerful, and he was very fast as well, and I consider it one of my greatest victories.
Baz, in 1985, you were given the opportunity to fight Lester Ellis for the 130-pound title. You had been fighting against lightweight and light welterweight previous to that. Most people thought you couldn't come down in weight and be able to fight 12 hard rounds against Lester. Most people thought Lester would just probably be too good, too strong for you on the night. But you proved them all wrong, and you won that title very clearly. Could you tell me about that fight?
Yeah, it was 15.
15 rounds, correct.
I think it was the second last 15 rounder in history that went 15, actually, but it was 15 rounds, and I really believe to this day the only reason I was given the fight was because Dana Goodson, who was the black American who I bought from Hawaii and was my trainer and who sort of revolutionised kickboxing to a certain extent in Australia, Dana had seen me struggle to make, I think it was about 9 stone 10, or about 138 pound in a fight in Hawaii earlier, and I had to make 130. And I think Dana jumped ship. Dana had left me when I collapsed in Miami I tore the band of tissue off my heel in a scheduled fight in Miami at the Fontainebleau Hilton against Juana Roy. It was national American TV, and I collapsed over there. And when we got back to Australia, long before the Lester Ellis fight, Dana jumped ship and went and trained Lester Ellis, and I think he was instrumental in convincing the Ellis camp that I couldn't possibly make the weight. So it was very lucky for me that he did talk. I mean, accepting the fight. And I'm indebted to Lester for the rest of my life, but he did take the fight. The big question was whether I could make the weight comfortably, and to be honest with you, with proper nutrition and proper diet, it's probably the way I should have always been. I think I could have won a world title a lot earlier if I had had the opportunity.
And Barry, you proved a very strong champion. You beat the credible American Mark Fernandez, who later went the distance with Jesse James Leah, Stevie Johnson and Greg Haugen. You stopped him in 4 rounds. Tell me about Mark Fernandez.
Yeah, well, Mark had just beaten the Filipino that Lester Ellis had fought, Rod Sequenin. He just beat Rod Sequenin clearly on points in Hawaii, and Sequenin had given Lester Ellis a war, so he was number 4. He was a credible challenger. We didn't really find out he was a southpaw until about a month before the fight, and sort of fortunately for me, Graham Brooks cut me in a gym spar, and one of my old adversaries and great sparring partners, he cut my left eye in a gym spar, so the fight was postponed, which gave me time to get southpaw sparring, because we didn't realise at that stage he was a southpaw. But Mark and I are now in contact. We speak by email, quite a bit, which is great. But on the night, I think I was just too physically strong for him, and finally caught him in the 4th round with a right to the chin. And as he was sort of going over, I hit him with a body shot perfect in the solar plexus and snapped his wind. He took the 10 count. So it was, although he did hit me one good uppercut, which you've got to really watch the film closely, and he split about 14 stitches under my chin, and it actually did stun me a little bit. But it was good to get that knockout victory in 4 rounds over Mark Fernandez.
And then you went in with the very hard punching Korean Shik Choi, who would later went 6 rounds with Roland Navarrete, and you stopped him in 4. Tell me about that fight, Barry.
Yeah, no, I actually had to fight Choi first. I fought Choi before Fernandez. He was the number 1 contender, and that's after I beat Lester Ellis on points over 15. The IBF insisted that I had to fight Choi, because Choi had signed an agreement to stand aside to let Lester Ellis and I fight, because I was rated number 2 in the IBF lightweight division, and they allowed Choi to legally stand aside while we fought. But the agreement was we both had to sign contracts, Lester and I, that the winner would have to fight Choi. After I beat Lester, there was all the talk about a rematch with Lester, but I legally couldn't do it. I was bound to fight Choi, and fought Choi in Darwin. Promoter offered me a substantial payday. Never saw him again after the fight. He's now passed away, and dudded me of $133,000, to be honest. But the main thing was I kept the title. But Choi hit me with some bombs. It was 4 rounds of war. He really hit me hard. I think he had 17 KOs in about 20 fights. And
he was a great puncher, Barry.
Big puncher. Yeah, he hit me. We hit each other with a left hook each in about the 3rd round. I knew he did a 360. I did a pirouette almost, and I felt those left hooks for weeks after. I tell you, he really punched hard, didn't he, Choi? And
Barry, you went on to beat Najib Deo, who previously got a win over you, and again you beat him on points. But then you went up against Rocky Lockridge. Now you're involved in a club altercation where you were attacked, and a guy busted your nose. Alphonse Gangitano attacked you, and you had your nose reconstructed just 3 months prior to going against Lockridge. Tell me all about that, will you please, mate?
Yeah, well, Alphonse Gangitano was, I guess, a notorious, legendary gangster in Melbourne. Documentaries have been done in Underbelly series, etc., and he's no longer with us. He was shot eventually by one of his own associates, but they managed Lester Ellis, and they were filthy on me for beating Lester Ellis. And I'd come back from England, tried to get a fight for Lester Ellis, because in England I'd been basically mucked around trying to get a world title fight after I'd beaten Daho in Manchester. Nothing was happening. Came home and made the mistake of going to the Tony Miller, Jeff Fennick non-title fight, which they fought at featherweight. And afterwards I was invited to about 3 parties. Unfortunately, I went to a place called Lazar's, and from our history, I was set up by Alphonse Gangitano and some of his friends, and I was jumped and set upon and didn't get to throw a punch, and had my nose smashed right across the side of my face, and plus other serious injuries. And then I had to I went into hiding for a week. There was a lot of publicity about it, and I had to wait until the swelling went down. I had to have my nose rebroken and reconstructed, and it was never the same. And then a couple of months later, I had to take the fight with Lockridge, otherwise I was going to be stripped for inactivity.